So the Apstrata backend is really characterized by what we like to call the active data hub. The truth is that many applications need to have both a persistent storage and they also need to have some ability to orchestrate interaction with external services. And these days REST is such a popular tool and there's so many great services to mash up, but who says mashing up has to be just left to the client side? Really, the Active Data Hub is taking mashing up on the server side and taking it a step further, giving people the opportunity to have persistent data as well as being able to orchestrate communication with services like Twitter or Facebook, or even video encoding engines or whatever might be invented in the future. The Active Data Hub, we think, is really an interesting way to be able to replace the application server layer. Who needs to set up an application server tier when you can get everything you need right at Apstrata? The Apstrata backend is fundamentally composed of a schemaless database, which is simple to a certain degree, but also allows developers the ability to define constraints and validations and other things that are necessary in a typical web application. In addition, you can coordinate things through JavaScript scriptlets, which allow you to do everything from calling the Apstrata-based APIs all the way to being able to call out HTTP calls to any REST-based service. So let's imagine a typical use case for this. I have a web application that has a rich client UI allowing users to upload video. And when that video is uploaded, I want to transcode it into a few formats, perhaps MP4 and a high definition format. And then I want to get that information as soon as it's done, post it out to my blog, and I want to tweet about that. The Apstrata Active Data Hub concept makes it easy to capture that video asset, the original video, capture metadata about that video, and all of that becomes persistent on our backend. The next step would be all based right out of a JavaScript scriptlet where we can push that video out to, let's say, encoding.com or another video encoding service. That service will provide us with the encoding that we need, and when they're finished, they're going to post a callback back to our system. That callback is going to come back into the Apstrata database API, and using another scriptlet, we're going to be able to go ahead and post to Twitter that the video is ready. Maybe we'll also post a comment on our blog. Maybe we'll push thumbnails out to another service or to a service like Flickr. So this kind of orchestration typically would require an application server tier and a lot of coding. But imagine if we can do all of that just simply using a few JavaScript lines of code and an operational service that's ready to run out of the box. This is pretty powerful stuff. So obviously, understanding the Active Data Hub, it becomes clearly an interesting tool when we think about the Pushbutton Web. We're getting a lot of publicity lately about how the web, having been a pull resource, really isn't very efficient. And look what we can do if we start to think from a webhook's point of view about being able to send push notifications. Well, Apstrata Active Data Hub is fundamentally the ticket to the Pushbutton Web for any developer. The Pushbutton Web is great if we're talking about blogs. I post and my blog readers are updated automatically. That's a nice use case, but it's pretty reductive. Imagine if I have the power to have push control over any data that I choose. So I can not only capture data from my UIs, but I can push that data out to any endpoint, which could include a PubSub hub, or it could include any number of other services. So with the advent of the Pushbutton Web, we're hearing a lot about on the blogs these days, we understand that it's time to turn HTTP around and make HTTP a much more efficient protocol. So right now we're seeing a lot of activity with the blogs, allowing people to immediately get updates to their blog readers as soon as a post happens. And this is pretty exciting stuff, but imagine we take that a step further. Imagine that with Apstrata and a few lines of JavaScript code, we can turn virtually any service into a push-button service. And that might be not only when your application is saving data into Apstrata and you want to then take that data and push that out to a service like Twitter, but it might also be turning your data into a push-button service. So by being able to expose a JavaScript scriptlet, you essentially have the ability to be able to build an API on the fly. Not only can you push data out into any number of syncs, which might be social services like Twitter or Facebook, but you can also use those same lines of JavaScript to be able to have systems call into the Apstrata Active Data Hub, and therefore essentially you have an API on the fly building capability. Any intermediate level of service that's needed, which might be data aware or data agnostic, can instantly become an API which other services can call. So the push-button web becomes a sort of push-pull button web, in the sense that with the Active Data Hub, your application can become a kind of a kind of hub around which a spoke of dynamic services can be created. And that's a pretty exciting technology.